So what are some possible routes we could add to this thing? What if we did have a different URL for each room? That seems kind of reasonable, doesn't it? If we look at it now, the URL is always localhost 3000. So every time we refresh, we just go back to actually the one that's hard-coded in there. I think in the in main, we still have room is S2 morning by default. And so it's just always that. And there's no way to even link straight to one of the other rooms. It'd be nice if we could link to one of the other rooms by having a route to it. So our URLs looked something like, I don't know, localhost 3000 / rooms / random or whatever. Or / fancy. Or something like that. That seems like that could be cool. How could we do that? So which component is responsible for determining which room we're in? So room list is where we get the list and actually make the choice. But where is the current room actually stored? Say again? RoomForm. Well, that's to create a new one. But which component says which room we're actually chatting in right now? Main. Main has the room in state, right? So it's this current room right here that actually determines which one we're in. So we could, at this point, possibly add our routes. And then it would set state differently depending, perhaps. Or instead of room, it would be in a prop. Something like that. Let's see. So we want, as we saw, if you have a param in a route, and I suppose this would be a case like that. Right? Because it could be rooms / anything. So that seems like a param. And if that's the case, the param shows up in a prop, as we saw in the slides. This is probably not the easiest place to start route-wise. So let's do something a little easier. How about the form here? That seems like kind of a different page. So maybe the URL should actually change when we do that. So maybe we actually show that one instead of something else. But that's way down in room list, isn't it? Room list is deciding whether to show the form instead of everything else. If the room list were higher up in state, we could decide to actually show that instead of showing the other components. We wouldn't even show chat in the sidebar and stuff. So instead of making our CSS just cover it all up, we could actually do it at that level. Or we could at the very least just change the dang URL when it happens. Whatever we think. So what if room list has a route in it? Let's try importing route from React router DOM. Where is that form? It's called RoomForm. We have it in an if-else here. So we're basically saying, if a certain thing in state is true, we show one component. Otherwise, we show another. What we want to do instead is say, if it matches this route, do this. Otherwise, do something else. So we could have a route that points to RoomForm and then a route that points to all of this business. Well, guess what else is available in React Router DOM? There's actually a component called switch. And you can use that to determine which from among a set of several routes it actually matches. So the idea here is maybe we have a switch component imported from React Router, and it decides between a few routes. One of them, we could say route path equals /rooms/new. How's that? And instead of saying component equals RoomForm, I think I need to use a render prop because I need to pass in a couple of props, don't I? So I'll actually pass a prop called render, which receives as its value a function. And that function should simply return some JSX. I can use parentheses. And that JSX will just be this. Yeah, we're not done yet. So if it doesn't match that route, we want it to print the rest of that stuff. So what I could do is just have a default route. Don't specify a path. And just say, if it doesn't match that one, match this one. Since I'm using a switch, we can have a default, which we do by just adding a route that doesn't have any particular path associated with it. Then I should be able to just put all of this JSX in there. Hold on. All right, what are we complaining about? We're complaining way up here. The render method does have a return statement. That's what wrapping in parentheses does. Oh, this doesn't though. Whoops, I took the return statement out of my render function. Since this is a class component, not a functional stateless component, need a render method with a return statement. So now instead of actually putting ifs inside our render method, we're doing it in a more declarative way. We're using actual components here for a switch and a route, saying if the path is this, then render this component, otherwise render this one. All of this stuff. Now ideally all that stuff would probably be a separate component, but this will do for now. So now, when we click the Add a New Room button, instead of updating state to say Show Room Form False, I say we don't need that at all anymore. What do we need to do instead? We need to just actually navigate to that new path. So there's no Show Room Form, no Hide Room Form. We need to just actually change where we're navigating to. So where does that happen from? From inside the room list. Here's the button, the little plus circle button. On click is Show Room Form. Well, now it doesn't seem like it needs to be a button. It can just be a link. And link is something that is provided to us from inside React Router. So instead of saying button on click, show room form, I can just make this a link. Suppose we could leave that CSS style in there if we wanted to. And I just say where it links to. So link to equals, and just like ahref, /rooms/new, I think is what we said, right? Let's see what happens. Here's /rooms up here. What if I just browse straight to /rooms/new? There's the form. I can use the back button to get back. Now I'm not at /rooms form anymore. If I click this link, sure enough, it takes me there. So now I can browse straight to that if I have it bookmarked because it has its own URL. And I can get to it by just browsing to that URL. So it makes it a little simpler. Makes us not even need state to keep track of whether that thing is showing. Now, before we had a function called hide room form as well that we called from inside room form. I don't think we need that. Let's take hide room form out of the prop list here. And inside room form itself, what did we do? We had a cancel button down here, right? Here's the cancel button. And it says on click equals this.props.hide room form. Let's look at the props that are in room form now. Well, I don't have history, location, and match like I said I would. The way this works, if I said route path equals whatever, component equals room form, it would pass in those props that I said React Router always passes in. If you use a render function like this, however, it only sends whatever props you tell it to send. But your callback receives those router props as an argument. So is that what I usually call them, router props? That doesn't seem like what I call them. What do I call them? Nav props, that's right. So we can name it nav props. So those magical props that include your params and all that stuff, history, location, and match, will be sent as an argument to your render function here. So then I can pass them along. So let's look at our room form again. And now I just still, there we go, nav props, history, location, and match. There's another trick I haven't shown you involving destructuring. So nav props contains 3 props. It's an object with 3 props in it that automatically gets passed in here. But I don't want a nav props prop that contains history, location, and match. I just want my component to have history, location, and match. So here's a little trick you can do. Use the spread operator inside a piece of JSX like that, and you can break an object into multiple props. So you can use this anytime. This is just the first occasion we've had to really do it. Then if I look at room form, I actually have history, location, and match, which are usually passed in every time by React Router, but not if you use a render prop like this. Only if you say component equals. So what this means is I have this history object now, and I can call things like pop, go back, etc. So what do you think I'm trying to do here? I'm trying to make this the cancel button exit this form. So what do you think I have in mind here? I don't want it to call a function called hideRoomForm anymore. That changed something in state, and that isn't necessary anymore. What do we actually need to do to go back now? Change the link. Which we could do just by hitting the back button, right? Go to the new room form, hit the back button, and we're out of there. So, if we cancel, we should do the same thing we would do if we hit the back button in the browser. So we have this.props.history object now. Room form is not open. Here's room form. I have history, location, and match. From the slideshow, we saw history has things like push, block, go back, go forward. So what if our cancel button just called this.props.history.goback? That does it. So now our button here is just a link. It's a link to the path /rooms/new. And all our cancel button does is go back. It's like the back button. Another nice thing about that, if we do make it so that each room has its own URL, cancel will go back to whichever one you were just on. But we're not there yet. So what happens after we do create a room? It calls, here's the submit button. Here's the form. On submit, this.handle submit. Here's this.handle submit. So we add a room. Add a room, must be up here. We set state. So what happens here? Well, what it doesn't do is get us out of this. It adds the room, but it doesn't ever make the form go away, does it? So this.props.addRoom. And then, how about this.props.history.goback? So we'll close the form once we've saved it as well. Add a room. What else do kids today talk about? Sure. Chicken nuggies. Fried goodness. Create room. There's a room, and we're back on this page, right? Seems legit. Cool. Add route for room form.